So there's been a lot of egg and chicken talk lately, from conspiracies about the ingredient manipulation on food to reduce the egg production in backyard chickens to a full-on disruption of the supply from arson and diseases in factories. I'll talk about that at another time, but what I want to talk about right now is the benefit to having chickens and the negative stigma that surrounds backyard chickens, because the egg and food industry definitely does not want you to have your own chickens. Here's why. There's a myth that backyard chickens are too hard to keep and they're not worth the money to feed them, and many of us can definitely go overboard in the beginning to try to get the nicest coop and the nicest run for our chickens. It can be highly costly, and I'll tell you, it's not profitable at all having chickens. However, if you have just 3 to 5 chickens, you're not going to need as much feed as you would think, especially if you're giving food scraps, and you can probably build them a coop and run area for much cheaper than anything that you can buy that's already built. And you probably will not have to break the bank for it. There's another myth that your hens are going to stop laying after 2 to 3 years. That's just not true at all. As they age, they will lay less. So instead of getting 1 egg a day, you might get 1 every 2 to 3 days or every 3 to 4 days, depending how old they get. Your average hen's going to live about 5 to 8 years, and they can lay an egg up until the day they die. I can tell you that my 2-year-old hens are producing nonstop, and even in the winter. Hens are typically going to calm down laying in the winter. It does not mean anything's wrong with them. It just means they're taking a break. You can put some lights in there at night, the red lights that you see people use to try to increase production, but they're just taking a break. I say let the ladies have a break, so when the weather is nicer, they can go back to full production for you. And then there's a myth that old hens are just going to be useless and they're going to cost you feed. Again, they're still going to give you an egg. It's just not going to be as often as you think, but an old hen is going to teach the younger chicks what to do. How to find bugs, where the water container is, where the coop is, where to roost, when to go back to the coop. They're the elders to teach the youth. And the older hens have little personalities. It's like having a little grandparent. You also hear that they are too hard to keep because they will get sick. Listen, sure, your birds can get sick like any other living thing on earth, but these bird flu cases, the avian flu, they're happening in factories where they don't see daylight, they're crammed into boxes of their own feces, and they just live a putrid life. That's where all the negative stigma comes from. It's from the birds that are treated like garbage. So what do you think is the egg that they're giving you? It's probably going to be garbage. It's much better to know what your hens are eating, see your hens enjoying a life. That's going to be a healthy egg for you. And then there's the myth that they're too noisy. Yes, a rooster is going to be probably too noisy. There are many places that allow hens but do not allow roosters, because a rooster is not just going to crow when the sun comes up. He's going to crow all day long. But a hen, you're only going to hear them if something's going after them, trying to attack them, or you're going to hear a few little screams in the morning when they're laying an egg because it's painful. Otherwise, they're pretty quiet creatures. The biggest thing to me about having chickens is not that you get a consistent source of protein every day, and you do not need a rooster for them to lay an egg. It's how incredible composters they are. There's a video and audio going around of a man talking about a city in Belgium giving out 3 chickens to 2,000 households and whoever wanted them, and in the first month those 6,000 chickens helped reduce 100 tons of food waste that went to the landfill. I personally cannot find a source on this, but from having chickens, I can attest that this is something that we would all benefit from with having chickens. When you realize that almost all of your food waste can be tossed out to the mini dinosaurs in the backyard, everything from old pizza and breads and fruit to, yes, even chicken, you'll see a big reduction in the food that you're throwing out, and you realize that most of the food you throw out isn't food at all. It's just plastic and boxes from our highly processed lifestyle. If you're a family that eats a majority of whole food ingredients, you'll never throw out food again. Having chickens and a garden, to me, is the ultimate form of anarchy. It's not about running in the streets with a mask on. It's about becoming self-sufficient. If most families had a few chickens, the egg industry would be absolutely useless, and they don't want that. The biggest problem I've seen with having chickens is that when you get 3, you'll want 6, and then you'll want 12, and then 24, and then all of a sudden you have 50 chickens and they're on the roof of your house, they're laying eggs in your gutters, and you're like, what do I do? The answer is to get chickens.